Recording is in progress. Good evening, y'all. This is Platoon, Foxtrot Platoon, evenings and weekends, Module 5, Django, week 15, day 2. We're going to be using the Django REST framework and creating nested objects. This is not very complicated. This is a pretty simple lecture, I think. We're just gonna, I don't know, where's about the way you'd expect it to. Nesting objects with CRUD can get tricky, right? Because you're creating something and then you're creating others that are dependent on it or putting it with them at the time of creation. If not done properly, you could create orphaned objects that aren't related properly, and then this one would think that it has something and it doesn't. Obviously, you got to do it in an order that makes sense. If an object is dependent on another object, the first object's got to be created. But Python for this, I think, is fairly easy to follow. So if I lose y'all, just let me know. But I think it's kind of looks like what it does, as is Python. So we're going to understand create operations DRF. We're going to override a serializer's create method. Just override just means create a method with the same name. That's all it is, nothing fancy. And we're going to implement a view for create operations with nested objects. Obviously, you got to kind of do both. So the example, if you want to follow along, we based off nested views one branch with Pokemon app. That's not the right word. Hop in there, fix up the old requirements. Oh, wait, before we do that, let's go there. I know y'all don't like Vim, but this is the fastest way to get her done. Ooh, let's also make sure I'm not running a Docker file. Well, Docker file, Docker container, Docker down, dash V, or not Docker down, goodness gracious, Docker compose down, dash V. Ooh, we did have some going. Okay. And just to get this up and running, let's Python manage.py, make migrations. Oh, and before we migrate, we are going to need we're going to need this database up and running. But you can make the migrations without it. So we've got this running on that branch, not running the server currently, but I guess I could if I wanted. On day 2, which is today, we will focus on create operations of CRUD. Yeah, we already said that. In DRF, the create operation corresponds to the HTTP method post. Remember, post is create. When creating a new object, the process typically involves receiving data from a client, validating this data, and saving to the database. When dealing with a nested object, the create operation becomes a bit more complex, like we done said. We not only have to create the parent, in our case of Pokemon, but we need to create the associated nested objects, the moves, and establish that correct relationship at time of. We could add moves later, but this API endpoint, and again, there's a lot of ways to slice this. The way we're going to handle it is we want a single creation endpoint to handle a Pokemon with its moves. You could fire off 2 different curls. We could hit our Pokemon create, and then we could hit our move, create, and then keep track of the ID. You could do that too. For really complex operations, maybe doing them one at a time might be easier. But I think it's smart to be able to nest your creation when possible, because this is going to be a lot less writing operations. It should be more snappy. There's no reason to shoot the, requests all over the place. May as well send it to one endpoint, one data object that we just read and write with. So, Sandy, are you here? How's it going?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Phenomenal. Let's read this line by line and see if we can understand what it's doing. It's just Python. It kind of looks like what it's doing. But if you can, let's actually ignore most of this. Not too important. Let's just talk about the function here. What does it look like this is doing line by line?
Oh, geez. All right. Mm, so it's obviously creating a moves data or validated data. It's pop moves, which is removing the first of the list, the first item of the list, right? So
It
it's returning.
it would remove the first one if it didn't have an argument in it.
Mm,
This is going to be popping out key in its values.
okay.
Let's keep going though. What does this look like?
It is creating an instance
Mhm.
using the keywords argument.
That's right. So whatever else is left in validated data after moves, we kind of know what's going on with Pokemon. In fact, we've specified the fields here. So, all right, maybe I glanced over this a little faster than I should have. This is the fields we expect in this validated data, right? So we can kind of hope that this here is going to be key value pairs of ID, name, level, captured in moves. So this first one here is taking moves out of it, right?
Okay,
And the rest, though, all these things, is all we need to make a Pokemon, yeah?
pretty much.
Great. So this creates the Pokemon. And then with that move data, what's the rest of this doing?
Um, hmm. It's basically nesting the moves data within the Pokemon.
It is. More specifically, this moves data. So what kind of data object do you think that maybe is?
Query set.
Um, yeah. But rather, this will be a query set. This will be a list, right? Because we're
A
just
list.
iterating through it.
Okay.
And then I mean, not to give too much away, doing the same darn thing, creating a move using the keyword arguments, the quargs. And then this bit, what is this doing for each of those moves that we create?
Yeah, it's adding the move within the moves field in the Pokemon.
I agree. Matt Hemsworth, does that make sense? Do you agree with everything we said? Do we make any mistakes?
That all makes sense to me.
Brave. I don't know. We didn't print it. Let's print it later. That's what we're gonna do. I kind of, if I were to reorganize this, I would throw this up here as we kind of work through it and show y'all. But there is something nice down here with a view. There is a print. And while Python is great, and this is written in a way that's, what's the word? It's explicit enough. With a little bit of guesswork, we can mostly understand what's going on here, right? I don't need to see the object to kind of guess at what's going on. But for me, it's nice to see those objects. So we're actually going to print them down here in the views after it goes to the serializer. But when I go to add this code, I'm going to throw some prints in there, which we'll do now. So for the Pokemon serializer, we've seen one of these before. The moves we're getting from the move serializer, which we've seen before. And then we're going to build out the actual fields here. That's because DRF, Django REST Framework, maybe needs these to be explicitly stated. Normally we can infer, but since we're nesting, we're kind of overriding these methods here, which again, I didn't call that out. We are overriding create. This is built into DRF. It just doesn't work so well with nested groups. This all is going to go in Pokemon app serializers. So let's copy that. Bop, bop. And I think I have to create that if I remember. Yeah, that's correct. So within Pokemon app, new file. I am on the right. Nope, not serial.py. Here we go. All right, paste all that in there. All Sandy's code. Looks good. We basically talked about all this, but we removed the moves, right? Because this data that came in, we're gonna see it's kind of a packet. It's data size, it's data of Pokemon nested with some data. In fact, Jordan could probably be nice and show y'all what this is going to look like when it comes in. This is the JSON object that's going to be tossed in here. Notice outer level is the Pokemon, right? We get the name, captured, moves, all that jazz. And then nested within moves is a list that's going to have the stuff, to create a move. So by the time it gets over here, that's where we're actually breaking out all these bits here. The only thing's not mentioned is going to be ID because that comes for free. All right, implementing a view for the create operation. Also, I said I was going to add some prints in here. If that's helpful, maybe it's helpful. And I like helpful print statements. This is the validated data. After that, I just want to see what it looks like. Or rather, I want to see the moves data. And oh, and then we'll just see it after it pops off. Just to keep an eye on it, just to keep track of it. We'll delete these prints forever after this, but I want to watch the dance. For the views, we've got this get here. Actually, I don't think I'm changing too much about that. Let's look at our views.py. I am getting rid of a lot of comments. I think we're just going to write over the get and the post. Is that the best way to do this? Or I could just, you know what, for the sake of it, I could delete it all. Oh, wait, it's all up here. Gosh darn. I can't see. All right. So get all Pokemons, get all, nothing crazy. Serializer, we're gonna serialize the Pokemon into JSON. The response could be serializer.data. That's fine. The post, remember, serializer is just taking one type of data, convert it to another. So serializer is going to be Pokemon serializer. Data is going to be the request data that comes to this post. So the create is what's, performing the creation, but this post, that is saying when a post request is received to this view. So this is kind of the first entry in. Request.data is going to look exactly like this. It's just JSON. So that's the order in which things are coming in. So I expect to see raw JSON right here, set that as data. If serializer is valid, serializer.save, and then we're going to print that serializer here. Here's serializer data. I like new lines, and I'm going to jump to. So return response, basically, and I'm not a huge fan of using ifs, but this does return a true false. If the serializer works, if it is valid, we will save it, print it, return it. And what's important here is we can return specifically a status type in Django is 201 created. If serializer is not valid, errors, return 400 bad request. I like try catches. I think if you're using if else statements to catch errors, you're going to eventually run into an exception, possibly. Sometimes nones don't come out the way you want. Sometimes you're going to do something like if equal to none, but it's not none. It's in fact like an empty string or something like that. I like trying to catch errors more than true false, but for the sake of some very basic error handling here, that'll work. All right. Let's spin it up and let's follow the dance. Ooh. Now using our handy dandy nifty insomnia. I think I had one of these before. Let's copy this. Get out of here. So I've got, is this the exact same data from earlier? Yeah, this will be fine. And we are shooting it to the 8000 port. Ignore all that. Let's get that out of the way. So this is the JSON, just like we said. And you can see it responds. It looks like the exact same thing back, but the difference is, they have IDs, and this does indeed exist in the database. Let's follow our dance just a wee bit. Looking at the serializer. So hit the post. Serializer is going to reach out to the Pokemon serializer. That data, quest.data, is going in. Print. Let's look at that validated data right off the bat. The difference between, so this has been validated. This is being deserialized into something like, rather, an object that can be put into the database. We've got an ordered dictionary here of our list of 2 moves, and then there's our Bulbasaur. Remember, we pop off the moves, and this is the moves, just that order dict. This is the validated data without the moves, and then we get the serializer when it's all back. The only difference is it's going to be those IDs now exist, because by the time it gets back to the response, that serialized data that we have returned is the actual Pokemon that we have created. And that is evident by these IDs that now exist. If I were to shoot another one in there, here's the new stuff. These IDs are higher. We have iterated. So that's our second Pokemon in there. That's it. That's creation. That's how you post. That's how you do it with the Django REST framework by overriding. Nothing too crazy here. I don't think we've really displayed any super new knowledge beyond specify the fields, validate the data, and remove the data from your data request.data. Remove the nested from that because you have to create the parent before you create the child. Does that make sense? Anything crazy going on? Anything I'm glossing over? If you use this as a template, it should serve you well. If you deviate from the template, talk to the TAs. What are we doing today? Cars API team challenge, 3 days. Cars API. Over the next 3 days, your team will implement. Did y'all start this yesterday or is this a today thing? You started yesterday, that makes sense. I'm not gonna read it off to y'all. There it is. Ooh. Yeah, we'll talk about that. All right. No. I always lose my pause